I have this story here, folks. It's from Harper's Bazaar. Harper's Bazaar is a women's fashion mag. Well, that's what it's supposed to be, but it isn't anymore. And neither is Vogue, and neither are Cosmopolitan. Any of these women's fashion magazines, they're nothing but left-wing rags now. I mean, they literally are. I'm not trying to be disparaging in my description. That's what they've become. They've been taken over by elements of the feminazis, going to college, going to women's studies, and they've taken over. And they do the women's fashion stuff as the come on, but the stuff that they write about, they really care about. It's all left-wing dribble. If you are married to a Trump supporter, divorce them. You keep asking if the left has reached peak crazy. And the answer is no, folks. They're nowhere near peak crazy. You just be prepared for this. No matter how bad you think or how wacko you think they are, there is still fertile ground for them to uncover. Jennifer Wright is the author of Get Well Soon, History's Worst Plagues and the Heroes That Fought Them. 13 of the worst breakups in history. Anyway, she goes on to suggest here that with every week, life under the Trump administration becomes more unnerving. The administration trying to phase out the 15,000 trans people in the military. Trump is basically threatening nuclear war with North Korea. And Mueller is tapping a grand jury to look into the Russian connection. We live in interesting times. And by interesting, I mean on the verge of the second dark ages. Perhaps unsurprisingly, this is starting to create a rift, not just between different parts of the country, but between couples. And she goes on to cite here various couples that are having marital problems, all because of Trump. And the answer is just divorce them. It's the only solution left. And this is it sounds funny. It's not intended to be funny. It is intended to be serious advice. Folks, we're dealing with a combination, myriad of things, and all of it to one degree or another borders on insanity or lunacy, such as the idea that there's only one hate group in America, and it's on the right. The modern home of sheer unbridled hatred today is the Democrat Party and the people that vote for them. The American left can't hold a candle to anybody when it comes to hate. They have learned how to market it. They have learned how to sell it. They have learned how to put it into practice. And every other hater out there is a piker compared to the people on the left who practice hate. They get away with their hate by having it disguised as compassion and caring and defense of victims and so forth, but it is obscene. It is literally obscene. I got an email from a friend today. This statue toppling and changing names on buildings and schools is not new. By the way, have you heard the latest? Charlie Rose, we got the audio of this coming up. Charlie Rose and Al Sharpton both agree the Jefferson Memorial in Washington needs to come down. And if you think they're joking about this, they're not. They mean it. Certainly Al Sharpton does. And I don't think Charlie Rose is bright enough to know that it would be a wrong-headed move. That's the thing about these people on the left. They're not that smart. They're not anywhere near smart. And yet they have the reputations of being the brightest people. And I was listening to this clown on TV today at CNN. I actually turned on the sound for this. You know who this is, Snurley? Michael Eric Dyson. I mean, he's an angry racist, African-American college professor, activist, any number of things. And the segment was on how Trump is a racist and how Trump doesn't know how to hide his racism, and Trump is an idiot, and Trump is a danger, and Trump's got to go. As contrasted to Obama, who is brilliant, who is so cerebral we could barely keep up with him, who was compassionate, who reached across the aisle to the other side and brought people together. And I'm sitting here practically choking here on my chicken strip. I can't believe what I'm hearing. except that I have to believe it because he actually said it and he means it. But here's the thing, as we keep pointing out, every Democrat president, every Democrat leader is brilliant, is a brainiac, is so smart we can barely keep up. Every Republican president is a dunce. Ronaldus Magnus, George W. Bush, George H.W. Bush, and now the Trumpster. They're all idiots. They're all brain dead. They are all intellectual deficients. And it's just part of the narrative that exists constantly. Obama was by no means, he had this manner of speaking that made people think he understood the language, and so it sounded smart. But if you look at the things that Obama actually did, we've got to redefine smart. Because much of what passes for intelligence today is on the left, and it's dumb, and it's dangerous, it's reckless, and stupid. And yet, it is considered to be brilliant. Just as this idea of tearing down the Jefferson Memorial. I mean, Obama, you know, when history is written, if it ever is, Obama, there's a story from yesterday that in 2014, I love this, in 2014, Obama and his people knew the Russians were trying to hack elections. They were actually doing it in Ukraine, and Obama was huffing and puffing and making all kinds of threats that he didn't back up. And the story is that Obama and his team knew it, and they let the Russians get away with it, Putin, and they didn't stop it. And therefore, they should have known that it would have happened in 2016. Well, where was this brilliant, bright, erudite, sophisticated guy who had full knowledge of what Putin and the Russians were doing and didn't lift a finger to stop them? And the excuse can't be that Obama got snookered, because nobody could snooker Obama because nobody's smarter than Obama. Nobody's as smart as Obama. So it can't be that. So they're having to say, well, maybe he saw something we didn't. Maybe he knew something we didn't. Maybe, you know, we can't keep up with Obama. It would be reckless and dangerous to try. Well, all of this, a steady diet of this, is what we've been subjected to for so many years now. It's insulting. And if you let it seep into your inner being, it's depressing as it can be, because it's so diametrically opposite the truth. And now we're on this tear to tear down statues. And as my email friend here today says, it's not new. It's been happening for years. 8 years, in fact. America saw it. We all saw it. There was little, it seemed, that anybody could do or would do to stop it. And then one day a guy came along. He said, "Make America great again." Those 4 small words have big meanings. And one meaning is to honor, respect, learn, and preserve the history of America. You can't erase it, and you can't change it, and you can't wipe it out no matter how hard you try. Just as your personal life. You ever get the question, you have any regrets? What would you change? You know what the right answer to that question is, universally? Nothing. You can't change it. And so it's folly to pretend what would have happened if you could go back, because you can't. And so every experience that you have in life leads you to where you are at present. Good, bad, average, indifferent, it still is your history, and there's nothing you can do to change it. You can try to learn from it if you think you've been making mistakes. You can try to learn from it and expand if you think you've been doing things right, but you cannot change it. And regretting things in your past is a big mistake. Because nobody, well, there may be exceptions, but I'm going to say nobody living their life intends to screw up. Nobody intends to blow things to smithereens. Most people are trying to do their best, whatever that is. Most people are at least doing what they think is best or right, however they define it. So, same thing with American history. We can't change it. We can't erase it. There's not a thing that can be accomplished by tearing down statues, eliminating monuments, changing the names. There's nothing that can be done. It will not improve anything. All it's going to do is dumb people down. It's not even going to make these leftists on this tear happy. They are incapable of happiness. Their lives depend on being constantly enraged, constantly offended, constantly put upon, constantly victimized. There is nothing that can make them happy, and it's time to stop trying to. It's time to stop acknowledging their complaints and their grievances under the premise that we can alleviate them, because we can't, because they are incapable, because they don't want to be content, happy. That's not who they are. They have been raised, conditioned, educated to be raging angry, infuriated, and they have been trained and educated to be enraged and angry at their own country over things that cannot be changed, over things that cannot be erased. They are not taught perspective. They are not taught how those things in America's past actually led to vast improvements for everybody in America, because there is no room for the affirmative. There is no room for the positive. And so trying to meet these people halfway, as the president discovered yesterday, is a losing proposition. It's not possible. You cannot ameliorate them. You cannot do anything that would satisfy them. Every cave-in, every acquiescence only leads to further outrage. And an attempt to acknowledge their grievance and try to change it is met with, see, you're guilty. You admit you're guilty. And then they add on additional new charges. We're basically dealing with a bunch of spoiled, rotten kids who have become adults with a lot of money and have become insane or lunatic or out of kilter by virtue of their environment, their education, and what have you. But there is no halfway with these people. They don't even want there to be. So back to my email buddy here. One day a guy came along who said, "Make America great again." Those four small words have big meanings. And one meaning is to want to respect, learn, and preserve the history of America. So a lot of people, the majority in fact, voted for the man who said those words. As a result, in a screw you to him and all who voted for him, the leftist communists in our midst are doubling down. Rush, I voted for Donald Trump as the only option to stop the Obama, Clinton, Soros communist total takeover of America. I never thought Donald Trump was Jimmy Stewart and Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. I never thought he was some great orator. Never thought he was going to dazzle anybody with pithy wisdom. I know that's not who Donald Trump is. What I do know is that if Hillary Clinton had won in November, these rabid mongrel mobs who were throwing Coke cans filled with concrete at everybody would have the total support and protection of the U.S. government, as they did during the Obama administration. A lunatic shoots 5 cops in Dallas, and Obama's first statement, "We must not rush to judgment on motive." Remember? No condemnation. There wasn't any condemnation when this wacko from Illinois tried to assassinate a bunch of Republican congressmen. It's definitely a two-way street here. Donald Trump hadn't hurt anybody. Donald Trump hadn't pulled a trigger at anybody, done diddly squat yet. Look at what they're saying about Donald Trump compared to what they've said about actual terrorists who have committed murder. Those people deserve to be excused. Well, their rage we need to understand. You see, they come from a special grievance born of the founding of this country. Donald Trump is a rich guy who's made it all of his life. He doesn't have any idea what life is like for these people. So they say. But I think this is true. If Hillary had won in November, these mobs, these riots, these are not protesters. This is not dissent. There's not dissidents out there. These are rioters and mobs. They would have the total support and protection of the U.S. government, just as they did while they were organized under Obama's protection. Would I vote for Donald Trump again today with the same options? Damn right I would. Got the email right before the program began. I'm sure it reflects the thinking of many of you. So what did we learn yesterday? Let me sum up for you what happened. Starting back on Saturday, we have the events taking place in Charlottesville, Virginia. The media, in unison, begins to clamor for Donald Trump to denounce the racism and the violence in Virginia, but only denounce the racism and violence of one half of the participants. So Trump said, okay, and he went out, he made a statement where he denounced the racism and the hatred and violence on all sides, he said. Media said, that just doesn't do it for us. That just doesn't get it done. You need to name the Nazis. You need to name the Klan. You need to call out the white supremacists. You need to call out your Steve Bannon's buddies. So Monday came. We carried it. You heard Trump. He did it. Came out yesterday, and he mentioned my name. The white supremacists, the KKK, and the Nazis. What'd the media do? It's ridiculous. You didn't mean it. You didn't mean it. You only did it because we forced you into it. So we're not going to give you any credit because we don't think you meant it. We actually think you side with the racists. We think you like the Nazis. You didn't mean it. You didn't mean it. You can't make us believe that you did. How close is Trump to saying, screw this, where's the golf course?